Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the center of the Grand Council chamber, her dark blue diplomatic uniform stark against the swirling marble floor. The massive chamber stretched upward for hundreds of meters, with curved seating areas for representatives of the 17 elder species of the Galactic consual. Light filtered in through crystal panels, casting rainbows across the ancient hall. Elena had walked into this chamber hundreds of times over her 15-year career as Earth's senior diplomat. Today felt different. The air seemed thicker, and the usual quiet conversations had been replaced by tense silence. High Arbiter Zal Morin of the Vexari species sat at the center of the curved main table. His pale green skin reflected the light, and his 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction in Vexari body language that Elena had learned to recognize years ago. "The consual has reached a decision," Zal Morin announced, his translator device giving his words a metallic edge. "Earth's protective status within consual space is hereby revoked." Elena's heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained calm. This was worse than expected. Protective status meant Earth and its colonies were safe from military action by other species. Without it, humanity stood exposed. "On what grounds?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her. Zal Morin's mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Humanity has been deemed unpredictably volatile. Your species advances too quickly and without sufficient caution. The elders have voted 16-1 that this represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability." Elena scanned the chamber. Most representatives avoided her gaze. Only Ambassador Trell of the Mantidean hives met her eyes, his antenna drooping, in what Elena recognized as apology. The single vote in humanity's favor, no doubt. "This decision also transfers administrative control of the following systems to consual oversight," Zal Morin continued, displaying a list of star systems. Elena's diplomatic mask slipped as she recognized the names: Proxima Centauri, Tau Ceti, Epsilon Eridani, all systems where humans had established thriving colonies and mining operations over the past 50 years. Systems rich in rare elements and resources. "This is theft," Elena said, her voice dropping, dangerously low. "Those systems were empty when we arrived. We terraformed dead worlds. We built those outposts with human hands and human lives. The resources of the galaxy belong to all under consual management," replied Zal Morin smoothly. "Your unregulated expansion threatened established trade balances." Elena looked around the chamber again, seeing new details through her rising anger. The Draylid representative wore newly designed jewelry made of platinum iridium alloy, a specialty of human miners in the Tau Ceti belt. The Herix diplomat reviewed documents on a datapad powered by quantum storage cells, technology developed in human labs on Proxima Centauri 2. This wasn't about safety. This was a resource grab, planned for years. "When does this take effect?" Elena asked, struggling to maintain her composure. "Immediately," replied Zal Morin. "Consual administrative ships are already en route to the listed systems. Your colonial governors have been notified to prepare for transition." Elena felt a cold fury rising within her. 15 years of careful diplomacy, decades of humanity playing by consual rules, all while these civilized species plotted behind closed doors. "Ambassador Reyes," said Zal Morin, "your reaction seems to confirm our assessment of human volatility. Perhaps you should compose yourself." Something broke inside Elena. Not her control, something deeper. Her belief in the system. Her trust in the process. The diplomatic veil she had worn for so long tore away. "You mistake patience for weakness," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Several council members visibly flinched. "And that will be your undoing." The chamber fell completely silent. In 15 years, no one had heard Elena Reyes speak with anything but measured diplomacy. "Humans joined the galactic community in good faith," she continued, standing straighter. "We shared our innovations, we respected your borders, we studied your cultures and adapted to your customs. And while we extended our hands in friendship, you plotted to take what we built. These dramatics serve no purpose, Ambassador." Zalmorin said, but his upper eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of nervousness. Let me be perfectly clear, Elena said, ignoring him. Earth does not recognize this decision. We will not surrender our colonies, and we will not forget who stood against us today. She looked each representative in the eyes one by one. Many looked away. Zalmorin rose from his seat. The decision is final, Ambassador Reyes. Defiance will only make the transition more difficult for your colonists. The consual has stood for 12,000 years. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Consider your position carefully. Elena didn't bother responding to him. Instead, she turned her back, a shocking breach of protocol, and walked toward the chamber doors. The gathered diplomats murmured in surprise and disapproval. Just before exiting, she turned back to face the assembly one last time. The consual has stood for 12,000 years because it evolved and adapted. Today you have chosen stagnation and theft over growth and cooperation. Remember this moment. It's the beginning of your end. With that, she strode out of the chamber, the massive doors sliding shut behind her with a resonant boom. In the empty hallway, Elena leaned against the cool wall and took a deep breath. Her hands shook with suppressed emotion. The quantum communication device in her pocket vibrated, a priority message from Earth Command, no doubt already receiving reports from the colonies. She had 15 minutes before her shuttle departed for the human embassy. 15 minutes to organize her thoughts and plan her next steps, because one thing was certain: this betrayal would not stand. Elena straightened her uniform and began walking toward the shuttle bay, her mind already racing through possibilities and scenarios. The Galactic consual had just made the biggest mistake in its 12,000-year history. They had made an enemy of humanity, and they had made it personal for Elena Reyes. As she walked, she activated her neural implant's recording function. Begin transmission to Earth Command, Diplomatic Priority Alpha. The consual has voted to revoke our protective status and seize our outer colonies. Expect hostile action within days. Requesting immediate conference with the Security Council and colonial governors upon my return. Special focus on the Concordat Protocol. The Concordat Protocol, a contingency plan she had developed years ago, but hoped never to use. A plan for how humanity might survive if the consual ever turned against them. Today it had become necessary. And one more thing, she added to her recording. The peace is broken. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are. 3 weeks had passed since the Galactic consual's betrayal, and an unusual silence had fallen across human diplomatic channels. The 17 elder species had expected immediate protests, military movements, or desperate appeals for reconsideration. Instead, they encountered only silence from Earth and its colonies. This silence confused and worried many consual members. Have they simply accepted our decision? Asked the Herrick's representative during a private consual meeting. High Arbiter Zalmorin's 4 eyes narrowed. Humans never accept defeat so easily. They are planning something. Ambassador Trell of the Mantodian hives clicked his mandibles nervously. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The human colonies have shut down all trade. 3 of my worlds already report shortages of medical supplies that only human factories produce. Weakness, hissed Zalmorin. They will break soon enough. But behind the scenes, the silence was far from inactive. In her diplomatic quarters at the Earth Embassy on Centauri Station, Ambassador Elena Reyes had transformed her living space into the command center for what she called Operation Thunderclap. The spacious apartment now hummed with activity. One room was filled with data screens showing star maps, resource charts, and communication networks. Another had been converted into a secure meeting area where Elena conferred with her hand-picked team via quantum holographic projections. The consual believes I'm simply gathering my personal belongings before Earth's official expulsion ceremony, Elena explained to her team during their morning briefing. This gives us the perfect cover to operate right under their noses, Commander. Jackson from Earth Military Intelligence nodded on his holographic display. Our colonies are maintaining radio silence as ordered. But our stealth reconnaissance shows consual ships have already begun setting up administrative bases in the Tau Ceti system. Elena's face hardened. And our defensive preparations? Proceeding, ahead of schedule, replied Dr. Sato, head of Earth's Advanced Defense Research Division. Her hologram showed her standing in what appeared to be a massive underground facility. The Aegis system will be ready for deployment in all colonies within 2 more weeks. The technology works, Elena. In our tests, it neutralized every weapon system the consual might use against us without causing harm to the ships themselves. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Perfect. Defense without aggression. They'll never expect that approach from the unpredictably volatile humans. She turned to another hologram showing a tall woman with braided silver hair. Dr. Okafor, what has your team found in the archives? Dr. Okafor, Earth's leading xenohistorian, adjusted her glasses. More than we hoped for, Ambassador. We've uncovered centuries of documented consual violations against non-member species. Resources stolen, developing civilizations held back, even evidence of armed interventions disguised as peacekeeping missions. All deliberately buried in ancient archive sections that hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. Can we verify this information is authentic? Elena asked. Absolutely. These are the consual's own records, just hidden from public access. They were arrogant enough to document everything, never expecting anyone would search through billions of files dating back millennia. Elena nodded with satisfaction. And how goes our outreach to the non-consual species? This question was answered by Jun Wei, her chief diplomatic officer, who stood beside her in the room. He pulled up a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy with dozens of highlighted points. We've made contact with 43 independent species that exist beneath the consual's notice, Jun reported. Most are technologically advanced but have small territories or specialized ecological niches that made them unimportant to the consual. They've all experienced consual interference in some form, and they've all expressed interest in your proposal for the Concordat. Elena walked around the holographic display, studying each highlighted point. Many of these species had been trading partners with humanity for years. Some had shared scientific knowledge or cultural exchanges. All had been dismissed or exploited by the consual at some point in their histories. The Lithari crystal mines have already formally accepted membership, Jun continued. Their quantum communication abilities will be crucial for coordinating across such vast distances. And the Veil Collective has offered access to their cloaking technology, added Commander Jackson. Combined with our Aegis defensive systems, we'll have both shield and sword, so to speak. Elena nodded thoughtfully. Not a sword, a voice. One the consual can no longer ignore. She walked to her personal desk and picked up a small metal object, a quantum encryption key that would unlock the simultaneous transmission of thousands of messages across the galaxy. 22 days of silence, she said quietly. They think we're hiding, licking our wounds, but we've been building the largest diplomatic alliance in galactic history. She turned to her team, her eyes bright with purpose. Tomorrow, we break our silence. The Concordat of Sovereign Worlds will announce itself to the galaxy, and I will personally deliver the news to the consual. There will be resistance, warned Commander Jackson. Possibly even military action from hardliners like the Vexari. That's why our first wave of messages includes detailed information to every consual species about the defensive systems now protecting human colonies, replied Elena. If they attack, their weapons will fail, but their ships and crews will remain unharmed. We're not looking for war, we're changing the rules of engagement. Jun looked concerned. The consual has stood for 12,000 years, Elena. Institutions that old don't change easily. They don't, Elena agreed, but they do fall, and from the pieces, we'll build something better. She placed the quantum key into a secure terminal on her desk. Prepare the final message packages. Confirm our allies are ready. At 800 tomorrow, Operation Thunderclap goes active. As her team acknowledged her orders and their holograms faded one by one, Elena walked to the window of her quarters. The massive Centauri station rotated slowly, offering a spectacular view of the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. Human colonies prepared, and dozens of overlooked species stood ready to join a new alliance. The humans have been quiet. High Arbiter Zalmoran had told the consul that morning. Perhaps they are finally learning their place. Little did he know that in less than 24 hours, Elena Reyes would walk into the consul chamber and change the galaxy forever. The human response was about to begin. The Grand Council chamber buzzed with conversation as representatives of the 17 elder species gathered for what they thought would be another routine meeting. Today's agenda included dividing administrative responsibilities for the newly acquired human territories. High Arbiter Zalmoran entered through the private entrance reserved for senior officials, his ceremonial robes flowing behind him. He took his seat at the center of the main table and prepared to call the meeting to order. The sight that greeted him made his four eyes blink rapidly in surprise. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood calmly at the center podium, a position reserved exclusively for council elders. She wore a new uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and a small unfamiliar emblem on her collar. "You have no authority to stand there," Zalmoran said, his voice sharp with irritation. "Security, remove the human representative." The chamber's security officers, tall, armored Dralid warriors, hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "They will not intervene, High Arbiter," Elena said calmly. "Perhaps you should look around the chamber before making any more demands." Zalmoran turned to scan the room and froze. The observer galleries, usually empty except during major decisions, were filled with beings he didn't recognize, or rather, beings he recognized but had never expected to see in the consual chamber. The crystalline forms of the Lithari sparkled in the upper gallery, their transparent bodies refracting light across the walls. The gaseous veil collective floated, in specially designed containment fields, their swirling purple-blue forms shifting constantly. The microscopic quantum Concord was represented by hovering platforms containing billions of tiny sentient particles that glowed with inner light. And there were dozens more, representatives from species the consual had long dismissed as insignificant, unworthy of full recognition in galactic affairs. "What is the meaning of this?" Zalmoran demanded, standing up from his seat. "Observer species must request permission before attending consual sessions." "They are not here as observers," Elena replied. She gestured toward the gallery. "They are here as founding members of the Concordat of Sovereign Worlds." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several consual representatives looked nervous. "The what?" Zalmoran asked, his voice betraying his confusion. Elena stepped away from the central podium and activated its holographic display. A new symbol appeared above the chamber, a spiral galaxy with a network of connected points spanning its arms. "During these past 3 weeks of silence, humanity has been speaking with those your consul has long ignored," Elena explained. "Species with advanced technologies, unique abilities, and rich cultures that you deemed too small or too different to deserve an equal voice in galactic affairs." She swept her hand toward the galleries. "We found that many of them had been watching humanity with great interest. Our open trading policies, our cultural exchange programs, our willingness to deal fairly with all species regardless of their size or influence." Ambassador Trell of the Mantidean hives clicked his mandibles nervously. "How many?" he asked. 43 species have joined as founding members," Elena answered, with 16 more currently completing the membership process. The number sent another shockwave through the chamber. The consul itself only had 17 member species, even after 12,000 years of existence. Zalmoran's green skin darkened with anger. "This is meaningless political theater," he said dismissively. "These minor species have no significant territories, military forces, or economic power." A crystalline chime rang through the chamber as a Lithari representative floated down from the gallery, the crystal being glided to the floor beside Elena, its transparent body pulsing with internal light. "The consul's assessment of our significance is outdated," the Lithari said, its voice creating harmonics that made the chamber's walls vibrate slightly. The Lithari crystalline consciousness controls 11 star systems unknown to your navigational charts. Our quantum communication network spans 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. From another part of the gallery, a hovering platform descended. On it stood a small gray-skinned being no taller than Elena's waist, a representative of the Folded Space Engineers, a species the consual had dismissed centuries ago as primitive due to their simple appearance. My people have developed transit technology that makes your hyperspace lanes obsolete, the small being said. We've shared this technology with all Concordat members. One by one, representatives from various species descended to the chamber floor, surrounding Elena. Each described resources, technologies, or strategic locations unknown to or underestimated by the consual. The Veil Collective had energy production capabilities that dwarfed anything the consual used. The Quantum Concord possessed computing power that could predict stellar events centuries in advance. The Deep Current species controlled vast underwater territories on dozens of oceanic worlds. Zalmoran looked increasingly uncomfortable as the presentations continued. Other consual representatives whispered urgently to each other. Elena waited until all the Concordat representatives had spoken before addressing the chamber again. The Concordat does not seek conflict with the consual, she said clearly. But we will no longer accept being ignored, exploited, or controlled. Effective immediately, all Concordat territories, including Earth and its colonies, are declared sovereign and protected space. She turned to Zalmoran. Your administrative ships currently approaching human colonies have 2 options: depart peacefully or find their weapon systems temporarily disabled by our defense grid. No harm will come to their crews either way. The Herrick's representative stood up. This is an outrageous violation of consual authority. We have maintained galactic peace for 12,000 years. Peace for whom? Elena asked quietly. For the 17 species who control the chambers of power? What about the hundreds of other intelligent species who have no voice in your supposedly universal governance? The Lithari representative chimed again. We recognize the Concordat as the legitimate voice of galactic cooperation. The era of consual supremacy is over. As though on cue, the quantum communication devices of every consual representative activated simultaneously, receiving the same message. Formal notification from their home worlds that Concordat diplomatic missions had arrived, bearing evidence of ancient consual violations carefully hidden from public knowledge. Humanity doesn't seek dominance, Elena said, her voice projecting unwavering resolve. We seek partnership, something the consual forgot ages ago when you began to see yourselves as masters rather than equals. Zalmoran stood shaking with rage. The consual will not recognize this rebellion. Elena smiled slightly. You don't have to. Reality will proceed without your recognition. She turned to the assembled Concordat representatives. Our first open session begins in 1 hour, in the new Concordat Assembly Hall. All species are welcome to attend, including current consual members who wish to join us as equals. The chamber erupted into chaos as Elena and the Concordat representatives departed. 3 consual representatives immediately rose to follow them, ignoring Zalmoran's shouts to remain. The diplomatic revolution had begun. As they walked through the grand hallways, the Lithari representative glided beside Elena. Your strategy worked perfectly, Ambassador Reyes. The High Arbiter's face displayed the emotional pattern we predicted. Elena nodded. Shock is a powerful tool when carefully applied. The consual has gone unchallenged for so long they forgot it was possible. What comes next? Asked the representative from the Veil Collective floating above them. They'll try to break us economically first, Elena replied. Cut trade routes, freeze assets, establish blockades. It's their standard approach to dissent. And we are prepared for this? Asked the Folded Space Engineer. Elena smiled. More than prepared, in fact, I'm counting on it. Behind them, the sound of angry shouting still echoed from the consual chamber. Ahead, representatives from dozens of species gathered for the first meeting of a new galactic order. The first true test of the Concordat was about to begin. The consual's response came exactly as Elena had predicted. Within 3 days of the Concordate's formation, the 17 elder species implemented a full economic blockade. All official trade routes to Concordate worlds were closed. Financial assets in consual banks were frozen. Supply chains that had existed for centuries were severed overnight. In an emergency session, the consual leadership announced these measures with confidence. "These minor powers cannot survive without our economic infrastructure," High Arbiter Zalmoran declared. "This rebellious alliance will collapse within weeks as shortages spread across their territories." On Earth, the Human Security Council received reports of the blockade with surprising calm. "They've taken the bait," said Admiral Chen, reviewing the data on consual fleet movements. "Every major hyperspace lane to Concordate territories is now blockaded by consual military vessels." President Rivera nodded. "And our contingency supplies?" "All colonies report they have essential resources for at least 6 months," replied the economic minister. "But the real test begins now." At Centauri Station, which had been quickly transformed into the temporary headquarters of the Concordate, Elena Reyes called an emergency meeting of the Alliance leadership. Representatives from all member species gathered in the newly designated Assembly Hall, some physically present, others attending via advanced holographic projections. "The consual has implemented a full economic blockade," Elena announced to the assembly. "All traditional hyperspace routes are now closed to our ships and trade vessels." Murmurs of concern spread through the gathered representatives. A delegate, from a small aquatic species called the Marin, raised a webbed hand. "Our worlds depend on specialized medical supplies from the Dralid systems," the Marin representative said. "Without those shipments, our population will suffer greatly." Other representatives voiced similar concerns about critical resources and technologies they had previously obtained through consual-controlled channels. Elena listened patiently to each concern before stepping forward again. "This reaction was expected and planned for," she said calmly. "That is why humanity has been developing alternative transportation technology for the past decade." She nodded to Dr. Sato, who stood at the side of the hall. The scientist activated a holographic display at the center of the room. A complex device appeared in the projection, rotating slowly to show its details. "This is the Quantum Fold Transport Network device," Dr. Sato explained. "Using principles of quantum entanglement and folded space theory, these devices allow instantaneous transportation between any 2 points equipped with a QFT node." The hologram expanded to show a network of points spreading across a map of the Yao galaxy. Unlike traditional hyperspace travel, QFT transportation doesn't rely on established lanes or routes, Dr. Sato continued. "It creates a direct connection through subspace, completely undetectable by conventional sensors." Elena stepped forward again. "Humanity has been secretly installing these devices on all our colonies and outposts for years. As of today, we are prepared to share this technology with all Concordate members." The assembly hall erupted with excited conversation. A representative of the Folded Space Engineers approached the center platform. "My people helped refine this technology," the small gray being explained. "We have been working with human scientists in secret for 3 years. The network is stable, secure, and completely invisible to consual monitoring systems." "How quickly can these devices be distributed?" asked the Lithari representative. Elena smiled. "They already have been. During the past 3 weeks, as we formed the Concordate, human ships delivered prototype QFT nodes to the capital world of each member species. They only need to be activated." She held up a small device resembling a crystal key. "With your approval, we can bring the entire network online immediately." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the first shipments began moving through the Quantum Fold network, bypassing the consual blockade entirely. On Centauri Prime, Elena personally oversaw the first major test of the system, a humanitarian shipment of medical supplies to the Marin homeworld. She stood in the massive transport hub, watching as containers moved through the shimmering portal of the QFT device and instantly appeared at their destination, thousands of light years away. "It's beautiful," said Junwei, standing beside her. "An entire network built not on control of key locations but on cooperation between willing partners." Elena nodded. The consual's power has always depended on controlling the hyperspace lanes. They located their members' homeworlds at key strategic points, then used that position to dictate terms to everyone else. And now we've made those lanes irrelevant, Jun replied with a smile. As the days passed, the quantum fold network expanded rapidly. Each new concordate member received multiple QFT nodes, allowing them to establish direct connections with any other member world. Trade flourished along these new invisible pathways, completely beyond the consual's ability to track or control. 1 week after the blockade began, Elena hosted the first concordate economic summit on Centauri Prime. Representatives from all 43 founding member species gathered to share their unique resources and innovations. The Veil Collective offered revolutionary energy solutions that made power production nearly limitless. The Quantum Concord provided computational capabilities that optimized resource distribution across all member worlds. The Deep Current species shared advanced agricultural techniques that could triple food production on water worlds. And humanity contributed its strengths, adaptability, innovative thinking, and centuries of experience in overcoming resource limitations. The consual believes isolation will weaken us, Elena said in her opening address to the summit. Instead, it has forced us to look inward at our own strengths and outward to each other. Together, we have everything we need not just to survive but to thrive. As the summit proceeded, reports arrived from intelligence sources throughout consual space. The economic ministers of the elder species were panicking as they received data showing unexpected prosperity spreading through concordate systems. Markets that had once been dependent on consual goods now operated independently. Resources that the consual had controlled for millennia were being replaced by alternatives developed through cooperation between concordate scientists. On the 9th day of the blockade, the first crack in the consual's unity appeared. The Herix Dominion, one of the 17 elder species, announced it was withdrawing from the blockade efforts. The economic disruption is harming our worlds more than the concordate, the Herix representative admitted in a private message to Elena. Our medical facilities depend on specialized proteins produced in human colonies. Without them, our people suffer. Within days, 2 more consual species followed, quietly reaching out to establish private connections to the quantum fold network. Intior, his private chambers, High Arbiter Zalmorin received increasingly dire reports from across consual space. Supply shortages were spreading, markets were destabilizing, and public opinion was turning against the blockade as citizens questioned why their governments had cut them off from valuable trading partners. It's not working, admitted his chief economic advisor. Somehow they're bypassing our blockade entirely. And worse, 3 member species have already broken ranks. Zalmorin's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, betraying his anxiety. Then we must take more direct action, he said grimly. Prepare the military option. It's time to show these humans and their minor allies what happens when they challenge the established order. Back on Centauri Prime, Elena received intelligence about the Vexari military preparations with grim satisfaction. They're moving to Plan B, she told her advisory council. Military action against a human target, most likely a smaller outpost they consider vulnerable. Are we ready? Asked Commander Jackson. Elena nodded. The Aegis defensive systems are in place. Let them try. She looked out at the bustling activity of the Centauri transport hub, where ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through the QFT portals. The economic phase is nearly complete, she said quietly. Now we'll see if they're willing to go to war over their fading power. The next phase of the test was about to begin. The Europa research station orbited silently around Jupiter's icy moon. Built into a large asteroid tethered in stable orbit, the station appeared small and vulnerable from the outside. Only a few modest defense turrets were visible on its surface, and its power signature registered as minimal on long-range scans. To the approaching Vexari battle fleet, it seemed the perfect target. Confirm targeting data, ordered Commander Thexcal, son of High Arbiter Zalmorin. His 4 eyes focused on the tactical display showing the human outpost. Weapons status? All systems ready, Commander, replied his weapons officer. The human station has detected our approach but has taken no defensive actions. Their communication channels remain open but inactive. Thexcal allowed himself a satisfied smile. The plan was simple and had his father's full approval. A quick, decisive strike against a minor human outpost would demonstrate the consual's military superiority and force the Concordat to recognize the true balance of power. No communication attempts, he ordered. Proceed with the attack as planned. On the bridge of the Vexari flagship, tactical officers activated weapon systems, energy built up in the massive forward cannons designed to pierce planetary shields. Weapons at full charge, announced the weapons officer, firing in 3, 2, 1. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from the Vexari warships, streaking toward the human station. The bridge crew waited for the satisfying explosion that would mark the station's destruction. Instead, something extraordinary happened. As the energy beams approached the station, a soft blue field suddenly appeared around the human outpost. The weapons fire didn't explode against this shield as expected. Instead, the beams simply vanished into the field, which pulsed briefly brighter before returning to its previous state. Thexcal stared in disbelief. What happened? Status report. Energy weapons had no effect, Commander, replied the tactical officer, checking his instruments in confusion. The station appears completely undamaged. The defensive field absorbed our attack entirely. Impossible, Thexcal hissed. Increase power and fire again. The Vexari fleet unleashed a second barrage, this time with all ships firing simultaneously. The result was the same. The blue field appeared, absorbed the energy completely, and the station remained untouched. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the station. Thexcal hesitated, then nodded. Put it through. A holographic display activated, showing a human woman in a simple lab coat. She looked calm and untroubled, as though being attacked by a battle fleet was a minor inconvenience in her day. This is Dr. Maya Chen, director of the Europa Research Station, she said. I'd like to inform you that your weapons have been neutralized by our Aegis defense system. No further hostile actions are necessary as they will yield the same result. Thexcal's skin darkened with anger. What trickery is this? No defense system can completely neutralize a full Vexari battle fleet. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. I'm a scientist, not a military officer, but I can tell you that your weapon's energy was safely converted and absorbed by our shields. We could have redirected that energy back at your ships, but that would contradict the Concordat's non-aggressive principles. Before Thexcal could respond, another communication channel opened. This one showed Ambassador Elena Reyes, speaking from what appeared to be a large conference room filled with representatives of various species. Commander Thexcal, Elena said, her voice firm but not angry. I've called an emergency session of both the Concordat and the consual to address this unprovoked attack. The session is being broadcast on all galactic channels. The commander suddenly realized that everything, his attack orders, the weapons failure, and this conversation, was being transmitted live throughout both Concordat and consual space. This is a military operation sanctioned by the consual leadership, Thexcal said stiffly, trying to maintain his dignity. The human outpost represents a strategic threat. A research station studying Jupiter's moon ecosystem represents a threat? Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. The station has 12 scientists and no military personnel. The camera view widened to show the gathered representatives in the emergency session. Among them, looking deeply uncomfortable, sat High Arbiter Zal Moran. With the composed fury that had become her trademark, Elena presented evidence of the unprovoked attack alongside the restraint the humans had shown in response. We could have destroyed your fleet, she told the shocked consual members watching the broadcast. Instead, we sent them home with a message. The old ways of force will not work anymore. You can join us in building something better, or you can become irrelevant to the future of this galaxy. She turned to address the commander, directly again. Your weapons and engines remain fully functional, Commander Thexcal. Your crew is unharmed. You are free to depart peacefully, and we will take no action against you or your vessels. Thexcal looked to his tactical officers, who nodded confirmation. Their ships were indeed undamaged, despite the failed attack. "This is some kind of deception," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Chen shook her head. The Aegis defense system was developed through collaboration between human scientists and Lithari crystal mines. It identifies incoming energy weapons and converts their power to shield strength. The more you attack, the stronger our shields become. In the background of Elena's transmission, several consual representatives could be seen arguing with each other. 3 more had already left their seats and moved to the concordate side of the chamber. Elena addressed the entire audience watching across the galaxy. Today, the Vexari military launched an unprovoked attack against a civilian research station. The attack was neutralized without casualties on either side. The Concordate remains committed to peaceful coexistence and invites all species, including current consual members, to join us as equals in building a more just galactic community. She looked directly at Thexcal again. "Commander, please return to consual space and report what you've witnessed here today. No further demonstrations should be necessary." The transmission ended, leaving the Vexari commander staring at a blank screen. His officers looked to him for orders, their expressions uncertain. "Sir?" His second-in-command prompted after a long silence. "Your orders?" Thexcal struggled to process what had happened. The most powerful weapons in the Vexari arsenal had been rendered completely ineffective. Worse, the entire incident had been broadcast throughout the galaxy, humiliating both him and the consual leadership. "Set course for Vexari Prime," he finally ordered. "Maximum speed." As the fleet turned away from Europa Station, internal communications across consual space were in chaos. Military leaders demanded explanations for the failure of their most advanced weapons. Economic ministers reported growing unrest as citizens watched the broadcast and questioned their leadership's decisions. In the following days, 11 consual member species formally requested admission to the Concordate. Their populations had witnessed the failed attack and the peaceful response, and public opinion had shifted dramatically in favor of joining the new alliance. On Vexari Prime, High Arbiter Zalmoran faced the most serious political challenge of his long career. The carefully constructed image of consual invincibility had been shattered in a single broadcast. The Galactic Consual, an institution that had stood for over 12,000 years, was dissolving before everyone's eyes. In her office on Centauri Station, Elena Reyes reviewed the reports with her advisors. "The military option has failed them just as the economic option did," said Commander Jackson. "What will they try next?" Elena set down the reports and looked out at the stars. "They have only one option left now: diplomacy. The thing they should have chosen from the beginning." "And if they refuse?" asked Junwei. "Then history will move forward without them," Elena replied quietly. "But I suspect they're beginning to understand that already." 1 year had passed since the day the Galactic Consual had voted to revoke Earth's protective status. 1 year since Ambassador Elena Reyes had walked out of the council chamber with a promise that would reshape the stars. Today, representatives from over 60 species gathered on Earth itself for the Concordate Constitutional Convention. The Great Hall in Geneva had been specially expanded for the historic occasion, with environmental accommodations for beings from every kind of world, aquatic chambers for water breathers, low-gravity sections for those from smaller planets, and specialized atmosphere pockets for those who couldn't survive in Earth's oxygen-rich air. Elena stood at the entrance, greeting delegates as they arrived. The Concordate had grown far beyond her initial expectations. What had begun as 43 founding members had expanded to include species from across the galaxy, many of whom had lived in isolation for centuries before hearing about the new alliance. Ambassador Reyes, chimed the Lithari representative, its crystalline body shimmering in the morning sunlight. "A momentous day." "Indeed," Elena replied with a smile. "Is everything set for the signing ceremony?" "All preparations are complete, the crystal being confirmed. The document has been translated into 67 languages and encoded into formats readable by all member species." Elena nodded her thanks and continued greeting arrivals. Among the delegates were representatives from those consual species who had chosen to join the Concordat in the past year. 11 had formally transferred their membership, and the remaining 6 had finally requested observer status after their economic and political isolation had become untenable. The last 2. Arrive was a small delegation from the Vexari. Leading it was not High Arbiter Zalmoran, who had been removed from power after the failed military action against the Europa Station. Instead, a younger Vexari named Velsora served as their representative. She had been part of a reform movement that had gained power in the political upheaval following the consul's collapse. Ambassador Reyes, Velsora said, her voice carrying uncertainty as she approached. The Vexari delegation is grateful for the invitation. Elena studied the young diplomat for a moment before extending her hand in the human gesture of welcome. The Concordat welcomes all who wish to participate in building a more just galaxy, she said. Even those who once stood against us. Velsora took the human's hand carefully. We come only as observers today, but perhaps, in time is something we now have in abundance, Elena replied with a small smile. Inside the great hall, delegates took their places for the historic signing ceremony. At the center stood a simple table made from ancient oak, upon which rested the Concordat Charter, the document that would establish the principles and structure of the new Galactic Alliance. Dr. Okafor, who had led the team drafting the charter, stepped forward to address the gathered representatives. What we signed today is more than a treaty or a simple agreement, she said, her voice strong despite her advanced age. It is a declaration of principles that will guide interstellar relations for generations to come. She activated a holographic display showing the key articles of the charter. The sovereignty of each member species shall be respected and protected. All technological, cultural, and resource exchanges shall be conducted through fair and transparent agreements. Military force shall be used only for defense, never for conquest or coercion. All sentient beings, regardless of form or origin, shall be accorded equal rights and dignity. Decision-making shall be shared among all members, with no permanent hierarchy of authority. One by one, representatives approached the table to sign or mark the charter according to their species' customs. The Lithari crystalline ambassador left a unique light pattern embedded in the document. The Veil Collective representative infused a portion of their gaseous form into a special containment field attached to the charter. The Deep Current delegate applied a complex biochemical seal that changed colors with the currents of thought. When Elena's turn came, she signed with a simple pen, a deliberate choice to honor humanity's humble beginnings and long journey to the stars. As the ceremony concluded, she took the podium for a final address. 1 year ago, the peace we thought we had built was shattered, she began, looking out at the diverse gathering. We discovered that true peace cannot exist where there is inequality, where some voices matter more than others, where power dictates right. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humans have learned through our own long and often bloody history that lasting peace never comes through domination. It comes through justice, respect, and cooperation. These are not merely human values. They are universal principles that transcend the differences between our species. Elena gestured to the charter. This document enshrines these principles not as ideals to aspire to, but as the foundation upon which we will build our shared future. The Concordat is not a replacement for the consual. It is something entirely new. Not a hierarchy, but a network. Not a council of the powerful, but a community of equals. As she finished her speech, the assembled delegates rose in a standing ovation. Even the observer species delegations joined in the celebration, including the Vexari representatives. As the formal proceedings ended and delegates broke into smaller groups for discussion, Elena found herself face-to-face with Velsora once again. Your speech was moving, Ambassador Reyes, the Vexari said. But I must ask, how do you not harbor resentment toward my people after what we tried to do? Elena considered the question carefully. Holding on to anger serves no purpose in diplomacy, she said finally. What matters is not the conflicts of the past but the possibilities of the future. Velsora nodded slowly. There are many among my people who wish to join our new path forward. The door remains open, Elena replied. Always. Later that evening, as Earth's sun set on the convention hall, casting golden light across representatives of civilizations spanning the galaxy, Elena stood alone by a window. She watched as delegates from dozens of species mingled freely, sharing ideas and forming connections that would have been impossible under the old system. Junwei approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. To the successful conclusion of Operation Thunderclap, he said, offering her one. Elena smiled and took the glass. Not the conclusion, she corrected. Just the beginning. What happens now? Jun asked. The hard part, Elena replied, looking out at the gathering. Building something that lasts, something worthy of all these species putting their trust in a new way forward. And for you personally? Jun asked. After achieving all this in just 1 year, Elena took a sip of her champagne before answering. There are still thousands of independent species out there who haven't joined us yet. Civilizations developing on new worlds, ancient cultures in isolated systems who don't know about the Concordat. Her eyes brightened with purpose. Our work has only just begun. Across the hall, representatives from species that had once been bitter enemies now engaged in animated conversation. Resources were being pledged to help struggling worlds. Technology was being shared to solve common problems. The future was being written by many hands. From a shattered piece, humanity had helped forge something far stronger, a galaxy where diversity was not merely tolerated but celebrated, where cooperation replaced competition, and where every voice could be heard. It had begun with a diplomat's fury, but it would continue with a galaxy's hope.